Welcome to Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Unlearn the Crap TV is more than just a show. It's a movement towards breaking free from the disempowering structures designed to benefit the few at the expense of the many. It's about education, healing, and unlearning the detrimental beliefs that have been ingrained in society for generations. So now, please welcome the host of Unlearn the Crap TV, Kathy Baldwin.
For over 40 years, yes, I'm that old, I have been struggling with chronic stress. That chronic stress has developed into diseases, fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis. It has affected my mental health, brought about depression and anxiety. I struggled with so many different areas for the last 40 years because I didn't understand how my body worked. Now, for those of you who've watched the show before, you know that my big pivotal moment came in a complete and total breakdown where I lost everything and everybody and had to rebuild myself. Well, I wish that 40 years ago, I had have met our next guest. Our next guest has been an expert in stress and anxiety and depression and how the body works. And the reason he's an expert is because he is an internal doctor. He's written over 23 books with more in the works. He is on a mission to help all of us understand that we don't need to learn how to manage stress. He's going to tell us that we can actually eliminate it. And so when I met Dr. Mort Orman, I begged him to be on the show because the information he has to share is so important to each and every one of us. Will, would you bring our guest on the show and welcome Dr. Mort Orman? Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Kathy, for having me. I'm happy to talk to you and your audience. And fortunately, 40 years ago was about when I figured out what the heck was going on with stress and saved myself a lot of heartache, a lot of problems and trouble over the last 40 years that I probably would have had if I hadn't really understood what was going on. Yeah.
How did you get that epiphany? Because if I understand correctly, because I'm not a doctor,
Mhm.
but becoming a doctor, from what I understand, is pretty stressful.
It was, yeah. And that's firstly, when you go to medical school, they teach you how to have stress. they, they, they literally they don't know that they're doing that, or maybe they do, but when you go through that process, you end up developing mindsets and habits and characteristics that are great for being a doctor, but in your personal life they cause a lot of stress. So, for example, doctors are taught to be perfectionists. We're taught to be in control all the time. We're
Oh,
taught to always be right, never be wrong. Okay. So those things, you want your doctor, to be interested in perfection. You want your doctor to be right most of the time and not make mistakes and things like that. So as for to function as a professional, those were all the traits that we needed. Okay. But then when you go home at the end of the business day and you're interacting with your wife or your kids or your friends, those are like some of the worst traits that'll cause a lot of problems and stress in your life. So you actually get trained. You get trained to be a good doctor, but it also what comes along with it is you get these mindsets that lead to lots of stress. And most doctors never figure their way out of that trap. They end up being good doctors for their most of their lives, but their personal lives suffer and their stress levels are high, throughout their professional career, and they never escape the trap. But fortunately, I figured out what the heck was going on and got out of it in time. So,
oh, thank goodness for that. And I can't wait to talk about that. But I
yeah.
wanted to bring up a point that you brought in, which is so many of our professions that in order to be really good at that job, it requires that it takes away the part of us that allows us to be good as in our personal life. I
Yeah.
know cops, especially undercover cops, they
Yeah.
have some of the highest divorce rates.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There are a lot of. It's a trap that a lot of professionals fall in, not just doctors. But there's one set of traits you need to be successful in your profession, and then there's a whole bunch of other things you need to do to be successful in life. And sometimes it's letting go of those ones that you developed, as part of your profession. So you have to have this like on off switch, or develop this on off switch when you can turn them on when you need them and when they're useful, and then when they're causing problems you can shut them off and and access other qualities within yourself, other attributes within yourself that are more conducive to a good personal life, or a good family life, or a good being a good parent or a good partner, those kinds of things, which are all skill sets, by the way, that people can learn. But a lot of times, what we learn in our professional training will interfere with success in those domains.
Absolutely. Can you tell us how you figured this out?
Well, like I said, so I had a lot of stress going through training. And when I opened up my practice, I had a good bit of stress, and I tried all the standard stuff, the stress management things that I had learned about. Didn't really work for me. Didn't work a lot for my patients when I, recommended them to my patients. And then I'm seeing, as a doctor, you're seeing people, as you're taking care of people over time, and they're telling you they're stressed, and they're telling you the problems they're having and difficulties they're having, and you're seeing what happens to them health wise. So you're kind of seeing the consequences from the, not just in the health space, which the doctor would know intimately about their patients, but our patients will come in and tell us about, what's going on in their family, if they got divorced, or if they're worried about getting divorced, or if some family member got sick or they got sick. You knew that, but or having trouble with their kids, or trouble with the law, or in their job, or something. So you would get this information, and you could see that the people who were more highly stressed had more of these bad problems. And then you're sitting there with your own stress, and it's like, well, I think I can see where this leads and plays out over time. If I don't figure this out, I'm going to end up, with some disease, or I'm going to end up with some, failure in a relationship, which I was having at that time, repeated relationship failures. Okay, I couldn't figure out how to stop that cycle. And so, basically, the bottom line is, it led me into doing personal development work, which a lot of busy professionals don't make the time to do because they're busy. Fortunately, I had some time in my schedule, but I really made it a priority. And I spent a couple of years delving into multiple personal development programs. And I eventually cobbled enough things together from different programs and different people that I saw through a lot of the crap that I had been taught about stress that wasn't really true, you know? And that's literally what you have to do. You have to pierce through what most people believe if you really want to understand how things like stress and anger and other emotions really operate in life. And it's different from what we're told. It's different from what the experts believe. So I found out that a lot of the experts didn't really understand stress, or didn't understand anger, or what was going on, because they all were in the same mindset that, most people were stuck in. And once you see that that mindset is faulty, and you can see through it into what lies beyond it that you're not able to see when you're in it, then things start getting clearer, and you start to see the path to solutions for the various problems. So, for example, one of the first things that I discovered about stress, which was completely unknown to me at the time, was that there's no such thing as stress. It's just a buzzword. It's just a concept. Okay, we don't. You and I never suffer from stress.
Okay.
It's a word that we use. We're suffering from something.
Yeah.
There's something real. Okay, when we say we're stressed, there's something really going on. But it's not this thing called stress. And what I discovered was that stress is just a word that stands for problems. So when we say we're stressed, we're having different problems in our lives, and the problems are bothering us, or maybe they're making us sick, or giving us high blood pressure, or whatever. So when we say we're stressed, we're not really suffering from stress, like this mythical entity. We're suffering from real problems. And unfortunately, what society and stress experts have taught us is lump all your problems together in a basket, call it stress, and then ask yourself, how can I deal with my stress? And if that's what you do, the best thing you can do is just to deal with symptoms, because all your problems are mushed together. Okay. If you really want to solve those problems, you have to separate them out and look at them one by one and say, okay, what's causing this one? What's causing that one? If one of my stress problems is anger, what's causing my anger? If one of my stress problems is my marriage is falling apart or is strained and I'm worried about getting divorced, what's causing that? If one of my problems is I've got fibromyalgia or I've got some kind of health problem, what are the things that are causing that? It can be a combination of things. So you have to unpackage your stress problems and look at them individually and then drill down and see what's causing them and then deal with those causes. That's the ideal way to deal with stress.
Yes.
Not just, take a couple drinks or relax or run 5 miles or you listen to soft music, which is all great things to do, but they're really just addressing symptoms. They're not addressing the root causes of whatever the various problems are that people have. So that was a major awakening, enlightenment that changed my whole relationship to stress, because I was no longer asking myself, how can I deal with stress? I just threw that question away. I said, whenever I was feeling stressed, I would go, okay, well, what am I really feeling? What are the problems I'm having? And let me get specific. And the more specific I can get, then the more I can tackle each of those problems. That's what I ended up doing, and switching strategies to where instead of this general thing called stress, I focused on specific problems. That opened up tremendous doors for real solutions that I still use that approach today, you know?
That sounds wonderful. A few things I want to comment on. First of all, congratulations. 40 years ago, as a doctor, where you're trained to be having all the answers and be perfect, and you went on a personal development route,
Yeah.
congratulations. I mean, talk about forward thinking. That was amazing. Even 40 years later, people sometimes look at personal development as woo woo
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of it being.
Well, let me tell you something funny. The biggest, again, here's how your training as a professional causes you to be good in some domains and terrible in others. So the biggest barrier I had to understanding my stress correctly, okay, and my problems correctly, was I was taught as a doctor for 7 years, don't be wrong. Being wrong is the worst thing that you can ever be. Okay, so never be wrong, and never admit that you're wrong. It's like taboo, and that turned out to be the most critically important thing I had to be willing to do to have breakthroughs in terms of my emotions, in terms of my relationships, in terms of dealing with stress. I had to be willing to say, the ideas that I've been given about these things are wrong, and I'm wrong for accepting them and not questioning them. And I need to not be so, defending them. I need to be questioning them and challenging them and exploring what lies, are there any truths that lie beyond them that I'm missing? And that requires you to be open to being wrong, because you'll find out that you had some belief. Like I had a lot of beliefs about relationships that I thought were correct. They turned out to be completely ridiculous. but until I was willing to look at it and say, here I am, my relationships are failing one after another after another. And yeah, I can blame each of the women, for why the relationship didn't work out, which is what in fact I did. Until after enough of them happened, then I said, I might be playing a role here somewhere. I'm not not quite sure, but maybe I ought to look in that arena to see what am I doing to cause these relationships to fail, and then figuring out what I was doing. And then you have to go, oh, I had all these crazy ideas about relationships that were not good. I don't know where I got them from when I was young, but they were stuck in my head somewhere, and that's how I operated in relationships, from those ideas that I almost didn't even know I had.
Yeah.
Until I started rummaging around in my brain for what are the ideas I do have, then I started identifying them. And then when I looked at them, I go like, well, that's a crazy idea. I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with somebody that thought that or acted that way. And then you go up, and then
I definitely want us to unpack that because CRAP stands for Condition Responses Automatic Programming. But we're going to pick that up, and I'm going to challenge a couple of things you said when we come back from this commercial break. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
You know, I love the way you are so self-aware. I think that's absolutely wonderful. But I'm going to challenge some of what you just said because my doctor, my family doctor, wonderful, sweet man. And he tried to get to the root cause of why I was in so much pain, why I was experiencing constant fatigue, why I couldn't sleep, all of these symptoms that I was having. Mm-hmm. And when he would ask me about things, everything was so normal that I'm not under stress. No, it's just life. I really did not equate the two. It wasn't that I was lying to him. I did not understand that my normal was not normal and healthy.
Well, you're bringing up the big self-awareness problem that faces, like everybody in the world today. We're usually, our natural default is not to be very self-aware. And in fact, our brains have mechanisms to keep us from being aware of what our brains are doing. So, they hide some of the tricks that they play on us.
Could you explain that a little bit? Because that's fascinating.
Well, like there's like 200 cognitive biases that our brain, can fall into. Confirmation bias, things like that. But all of these biases are like camouflaged. So you don't really see that your brain is giving you a biased way of looking at things. It looks like it's the real truth. But your brain is in there selectively looking at things certain ways that are leaving out a lot of important facets of whatever the thing is you're looking at, and then it's selling it to you like it's the whole picture. But so it's got ways to protect itself from being discovered, from how it's misleading us all the time. And in terms of self-awareness, the brain, as a part of the brain, the unconscious part of the brain, that doesn't want us to be all that self-aware, because then we're not so easily controlled by those unconscious mechanisms. Once we see what they are and see how they're limiting us in many ways, then we can break through those limitations. But if the ego and the brain, they want to keep us comfortable. They want to keep us safe. They don't want us messing around with the beliefs once we form them. because they want everything to make sense and everything to be nice and comfortable and copacetic. So brain has a lot of defense mechanisms for recognizing what's going on. But self-awareness is not a natural state. You literally have to work at it, or you have to be fortunate and grow up in a family where it's encouraged or it's taught. I learned a lot of my self-awareness from the personal development work that I did. I didn't have a lot of it before I started doing that. But when you go into self-awareness programs, it's all about becoming aware of all this crap that you didn't know that you had in you, and how it was causing problems in your life. And then when you see it, you're like, oh, now that I see it, I can do something about it. But before I saw it or knew it was there, I was like up the creek. It's like it was nothing I could do to do anything about it. So yeah, it's a big problem that everybody faces. And at some level, you either through reading books or going to workshops or in therapy or coaching or whatever mechanisms, you can gain that self-awareness with some people that can help you do that. And as you do that, you get returned to your natural power, because like I say, once you see what's going on, you can usually do something about it. It's the fact that we don't have the awareness of what's really going on that causes a lot of the difficulty. So
Love that you said that, because it's so true. There's so many times that we are blinded by the thoughts, the beliefs, the automatic programming, that
yes,
when the truth comes and faces us, like
yes,
when the doctor asked me, did I have traumas?
yes.
Did I have issues? Did I have stresses? No. I mean, I'm Superwoman. I can do anything. I
Well,
what
there again, that's the problem with the word stress, is you can define it in lots of different ways, and everybody has their own definition of what stress is. So if I ask you, do you have stress? You're going to go reference whatever your definition of stress is, and you're going to say, do I have it? Do I have that, or do I not have that? Okay. So I had for example, I had a cardiologist sent me a patient when I was in practice and I was doing stress counseling, and this was a guy who was a police officer, and he was a runner, and he had a heart attack.
oh,
And it was a mild heart attack, and he had recovered, but he was terrified to go back to running. And no matter how much the cardiologist tried to convince him to go back to running, he was afraid to do it. So he sent him to me to help him with his anxiety about running. So the first visit, when he comes in to see me, all I knew was his cardiologist sent me. And he comes in, he sits down, and he says, well, my cardiologist sent me. He thinks I have stress. Well, I don't think I have stress. And I said to him, okay, what is your definition of stress? Because I knew he had to have one. And he said, oh, well, that's easy. Stress is when you're so discombobulated, you're so, out of it that you can't function, you can't go to work. And you see, he had returned to work. So in his mind, the way he had defined stress, I don't have stress. And then I said to him, this was like a 50-minute appointment. This is the first 5 minutes. And I said, well, let's do this. Let's take this word stress and let's set it aside for a second. And I said, let me ask you another question. Are you having any problems in your life? And he looked at me and goes, problems? How much time do you have, Doc? And he literally spent the next 45 minutes telling me every single, not every, but I mean, he had a whole litany of problems at work. He just had a heart attack. He's got anxiety. He's having trouble with his marriage. His kid's in trouble. Things have changed on the job. I mean, just one problem after another. But he had this little narrow definition of stress where if you ask him, do you have stress? He references that and goes, no, I don't have stress. That's the problem that we've with teaching people to think that stress is like this thing that you have. It's not. It's just a word that stands for problems.
well, we've also been taught that you're weak if you succumb to stress, because we're
True.
supposed to be able to. So let me ask you, my definition of stress,
Mhm.
it has been about the central nervous system being turned on all the time
Well,
and
but
not.
that's even that's not always true, because you can have stress and your central nervous system can be quiet. You can have huge problems in your life, and it may not be turning on your central nervous system. And many people it will, but there's some people that it won't. But they're still having those problems that are bothering them, and they may be affecting other systems in their body, other than the central nervous system or the GI system or something like that, that can be just as problematic. So that's the problem and like the way doctors are trained to define stress is biologically.
Okay,
So
good.
we know about all the not all, but we know about some of the chemicals and the hormones that get activated when we're under stress: cortisol, epinephrine, all kinds of other things. So we have this biologic definition, and you can define it in a number of different ways. You defined it in terms of the central nervous system being overactive or stimulated. You can define it in terms of chemicals in the bloodstream if you want to, heart dynamics, cardiovascular dynamics. They're all different biological definitions, but biology is only half the story. So if that's your definition of stress, you're missing the more important piece, which is what's driving the biology. What's making the biology be abnormal? It can be any kind of abnormal biology. It's the problems we're having in life. So when I explain this to people, I'll take a picture of a horse, you know, and I'll cut it down the middle, and I'll just show the back end of the horse. Okay, and I'll project that on the screen, and I'll say, now is this a horse? Everybody will go, of course it's not a horse. It's only half of a horse. I said, yes, that's right. It's only half of a horse. So we do make the same mistake when we define stress as just the abnormal biology, because it's just the back end of the stress problem. There's a front end that's missing, which is all the problems we're having in life, which is stirring up our nervous system and our hormones and our GI tract and causing us headaches and all this other stuff that it's doing. Okay. You can't take the front end of the horse off the back end of the horse and think you're dealing with the real thing. The front drives the back. Everywhere the back only goes where the front takes or causes it to go. So
Love
it's the
that
problem.
analogy.
It's the problems in life that cause the abnormal biology that doctors focus almost exclusively on, and we lose sight of the problems. So we tell people how to modify their physiology. You know,
Or take medication to
which
mask.
modifies the biology. Yeah, yeah, to feel better. You know, to calm down, to be more relaxed. But we're not saying, well, what are the damn problems you're having, and how about we get rid of them?
I love that. I do not know how you manage to be so innovative and so forward thinking. When I know someone who is suffering a very debilitating nerve problem, and that nerve problem is now being investigated by the doctors. They're doing all of these studies to find out how stress and how our thoughts and how our problems and how we resolve things can actually calm those pain receptors.
In some cases, they can. Yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, so there's some physical problems that that are multi-caused, multi-causal. So stress could be playing a role, but genetics could be playing a role, and other factors could be playing a role. So a lot of times it's not like one thing. It may
No.
be five things, and if you focus on any one, like the others don't exist, you're going to get a false diagnosis or a false cause, theory.
Yeah.
So with human beings, there's so many. It's so multifactorial in most things.
Yeah.
Stress often plays a role, but a lot of times we can't prove it or we can't tell for sure. But we just have this feeling from experience that yeah, that's probably involved, and it would help if you could figure out what those stress problems are you're having, and identify them and deal with them, and it might help your physical condition. Then again, it might not. So you have to depends how far things are advanced and how much is reversible. So, but you have to experiment to find out because nobody can tell you for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, this is 100% stress related. No, nobody's going to know that. Yeah,
I agree. And this study that he's going to be a part of is actually going to have a element of psycho therapy to it to help deal with those thoughts and the
yes,
stresses and problems and everything else and give tools on how to deal with that.
yeah. But it's very complicated to figure out exactly what's causing what. Same thing with nutrition. Nutrition probably plays a role in a lot of problems that we have, health problems that we have, but it's so complex and so complicated. And there's so many other factors in a person's life other than their nutrition that to be able to step in and sort out, what is the nutrition causing unrelated to all these other things, it's like really difficult. And then what happens is people come to they make conclusions as if they can know for a fact that this causes this and this causes, and a lot of times they're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we come back, I want to talk about emotions and how emotions work. And I want to hear your solutions
Okay.
about how we don't need to manage stress, that we can eliminate it, because that concept blows my mind. And so we're going to talk about that when we come back from this commercial break.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
So, when I went through my healing journey, I discovered emotions and how emotions are both vibrational as well as chemical, and that they will change the biology of our body. And Dr. David Hawkins was one of my teachers that I spent a lot of time studying about how all that works. He was a psychiatrist that wrote a book called Power versus Force. I know that you are an expert in stress and anger and all of these other debilitating emotions and states. Could you give us an idea of how you work with emotions?
Sure. Well, emotions, firstly, the way I think about emotions is, remember, stress is the umbrella, is the buzzword, where all kinds of problems can fall under that umbrella. And we all, in life, we experience different types of problems as human beings. So there's a whole bunch of emotions that can be problems for us: guilt, worry, anxiety, anger. Those are specific emotional problems that we can have. Then there's a whole bunch of relationship problems we can have. There's a whole bunch of work-related problems, career-related problems we can have. There's financial problems we can have. There's family problems we can have with our kids and stuff like that. There's unexpected crises like COVID that hit out of nowhere and disrupt things, or natural disasters. There's all these different kinds of problems we can have. So I see emotions as one slice of the pie of the stress problem landscape. Okay, but you can treat it like everything else. You define which emotion are you dealing with. Okay, is it anger? Is it anxiety? Is it worry? Is it guilt? Pinpoint the emotion and then pinpoint the causes. And the causes are always going to be two varieties. There's going to be stuff that's going on outside of you that's triggering the emotion, mostly outside of you. And then there's going to be what gets triggered inside of us in our brains. That's the part we're usually missing. So when
Yeah.
we try to find the causes of our emotions, we're usually up the creek because society has taught us a bunch of crap about where our emotions come from. Or they've only given us part of the story. They haven't given us the whole story. So, but they've sold it like it's the whole story. So that makes it crap because it's not true.
Yeah.
Okay. So, for example, with anger, most people can see the things that they're angry about. They see the behavior of other people or the government or this group or that group or whatever. And then they feel the anger. All right. And what they're not seeing is what's in between, and that their brain is in the mix. Okay, their brain is doing things to make them angry when they see those things. So the brain is playing, and what people don't understand is the brain is usually playing tricks on them when they're angry. So, for example, have you ever had a situation where you had somebody arrange to meet you or to transport you somewhere that was really important? You explained to them how important it was. They promised they would be conscientious. They would be there. You're there on time, and they're not there.
Yeah. We've
And
all had that.
5 minutes go by, they're still not there. Another 5 minutes, and now you're starting to imagine all this stuff. Oh, I should never have trusted them. I should never have, relied upon them, and they probably didn't pay enough attention. And you've got all this stuff going on, and it's making you angry. And then they show up, at the 15-minute mark, and they tell you this wild story about how they were very conscientious. They left a half an hour early. They got caught in a traffic jam. They couldn't get out. They were stuck. They feel really terrible that they, weren't there on time. It was totally their intention to be there on time. And if some unforeseen thing hadn't happened, they would have been there on time. As soon as you find out what the reality is, your anger just disappeared. It's eliminated. You didn't have to manage it. What you did, you had to correct for the tricks that your brain was playing on you, where it made up this whole scenario of how irresponsible they were and all that stuff, which is what got you angry. Okay. Because you
Yeah.
believed that was true for a moment. And then they come in and they tell you what's really true. And you look at, okay, my brain's telling me this, and here's what the reality is. There's really nothing to be angry about. It's gone because you're seeing the situation differently now. You didn't have to, punch a punching bag or run 5 miles. You just had to realize your brain tricked you. And what most people don't realize is whenever we get angry, our brain is tricking us because that's how anger gets created. There's 3 filters that our brain gives us every time we're angry. And it's the same for other emotions. If it's anxiety, it's a different 3 filters. If it's worry, it's another 3 filters. So the brain will look at things and filter it and only show you part of what's going on, or maybe even distort part of what's going on, and will sell it to you like it's the reality. And then you react to what your brain is telling you is real. That's where the physiology gets stirred up because you're believing what your brain is either showing you or telling you. And most people don't know that there's 3 filters involved. They don't know what those 3 filters are. But each of them is a way that your brain can trick you and make you believe something is true when it's not. So real quick, the 3 filters are very simple, and people should write these down because this will be very handy. All right. For the rest of your life, you'll know where your anger always comes from. It comes from these 3 filters that your brain
Okay.
is. Okay. Somebody did something bad and wrong they shouldn't have done. That's
Okay.
filter number 1. Somebody was hurt or harmed or negatively impacted by what they did. So there's some kind of negative impact. All right. And the person who did the bad and wrong thing was unilaterally responsible or totally to blame. So we have this very narrow blame filter where we're only focused on what that person did, and we don't see any other things that may have played a role in their behavior, causing their behavior. Okay. So when you get those 3 filters, somebody did something bad and wrong they shouldn't have done, somebody was hurt and harmed or negatively impacted, and that person was responsible to blame, and you believe that that's real and true, you get anger. So if you're working at your computer one day and you've been working for a couple hours and all of a sudden you get a blue screen or your computer goes on the fritz and you feel like you want to punch it, okay, why did you get angry at your computer? Well, your brain said your computer is doing something it shouldn't be doing. It's malfunctioning. It shouldn't do that, okay? You're now negatively impacted because you can't continue to work, and B, you might have lost all the work that you just did. And C, who's responsible? Who or what's responsible? The damn computer's responsible. Okay. When you look at it that way, then you want to punch your computer. Okay. Because you're looking through those 3 filters. And that anger always comes from those. Doesn't matter whether it's a little tiny anger where you're just irritated or annoyed, standing in line, you're a little impatient, or you rip roaring road rage, where you're just ready to get out and shoot somebody. Not recommending that. It still comes from the same filters, same three filters. The person that gets road rage is saying, you really, really did something bad and wrong you shouldn't have done. And I'm really negatively impacted, or other people are really negative impacted by your bad driving. And you're totally responsible to blame. Nobody else had anything to do with it. Okay. So, and then they get really into that, and it really magnifies the anger for them, and then gets them to be more explosive. But it's the same same three filters if you're just standing in line and you're irritated. If the line's not moving fast enough, or the cashier is talking to, the patron and taking a little more time than you think he or she should. It's the same three filters we're looking through. So
okay,
people,
so I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love that. When I'm working with my clients and in my book, I talk about perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that we have the choice of perspective. If we're trained, the crap in our brain is telling us to go through these three filters. How do we stop?
You don't stop. It's automatic. It's ingrained.
Okay. So how do we eliminate anger?
Well, now here's where self-awareness comes in. The point is, until now, you probably didn't have that awareness that there are three filters that click in every time you get angry, and that here's what the three filters are. This is what your brain is telling you is true. Automatic, knee-jerk. You can't stop it. Your brain's going to keep doing it for a while anyway. Down the road, you could stop it, months down the road, you might be able to reduce it. But in the beginning, when you become aware of it, it's going to keep happening. Okay, your brain's going to keep sending you these messages and tricking you and making you believe stuff that isn't true. Your job now is to remember every time you get angry, I wonder how my brain's tricking me. I now know the three narratives it's giving me. Okay. Let me look at those three narratives, see if I can figure out where one or more of them may not be true.
So how do we discern and create that space between the trigger, the anger, the emotion, where most anger brings us out of control?
If you don't step in, it will snowball and it will do its thing and it'll take you where it takes you. But the trick is, once you become aware that what you're thinking, that you think that it's true, so that's why you're continuing to act with anger. But once you realize, just like I said, the most important thing I had to confront was realizing I'm wrong a lot of times when I think I'm right. As a doctor, that was like really hard to contemplate, but it turned out to be true. Okay. So now once you do that a bunch of times, you realize every time I get angry, you go like, I'm probably wrong about something. I don't know what it is, but my brain's probably tricking me in one of these three ways or more. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two, and sometimes it's all three of them are wrong. But now it's incumbent upon me to stop. Don't let this thing snowball until I figure out, what's true and what's not true, because I'm really on a path where I'm being driven by something that's probably untrue. And I can let that continue, but now I have some awareness that may be what's going on. And it's my responsibility to pause for a moment, remember the three filters. That's why I say write them down, put them on a sticky note, put it on your cell phone, put it on an index card, somewhere where when you get angry and you can sort of take a break for a second and just pull out this card. So, okay, here's why I'm angry. My brain is telling me this, and this are true. This is how I'm looking at the situation. Now I need to question it. And if you start questioning these three filters, you'll often find that one or more of them isn't true. It's amazing how often we get angry when at least one of those filters isn't true. I would say it's 95% of the time. In my experience, over 40 years, it's been 95% of the time. And it's probably more.
I could not agree with you more. And I want to say to people who are watching that our education system, whether you were a doctor or a police officer or whatever, our education system was funded and built on right and wrong, judgment. And, did you measure up? And so whether our brains are like that or it's a doctor, we have gone through a system that we've been trained to think that we're right or wrong.
It's funny, when my daughter was about 2 years old, we got her this little toy where it's like had some different boxes and you made choices. And if you got the right choice, the machine had an automated voice that would go, "You are right." You are right. And I'm sitting there. It's like, what did we do? What are we doing to this kid? We're programming her, and this machine is programming her. It was like we regretted. I mean, but then she fell in love with the thing, and so it was hard to take it away from her. But we probably should have, but we didn't.
Well, yeah, because now you're getting a dopamine hit every time you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when we come back, I know that you have all sorts of ideas and suggestions on how we can live with a smile and look on your face. We can live like this. We don't have to have anger and stress and depression. We are more powerful than that.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to know all the good, juicy stuff when we come back from this commercial break. We'll be right back. Oh, and while you're waiting on the commercial, don't forget to subscribe and share and comment. What are your thoughts and feelings about this? We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
So on a previous episode, I had a guest, and he was the reality interventionist. And every time he uncovered a truth, he would cough. And so during the break, you said something really fascinating that I want you to tell the audience.
Well, we were talking about your cough, which is different than his cough. But you were saying that you were having some dry throat and cough in your throat. And what I know is that when we have these kind of conversations and you talk about deep truths that most of society, has been exposed to, and it goes against the predominant narratives of the culture, okay, that our unconscious gets threatened. And it can produce physical symptoms to try and get us out of the conversation or get distracted from what's being said because it doesn't want to let it in. Okay. So, funny, there was a great TED Talk that I saw a while back by a psychologist, and the title of the TED Talk was something like, "Why is it that people can watch these great TED Talks and be totally excited and thrilled and nothing changes in their life?" And he recognized this as a pattern, and he did a TED Talk on why that is, and his conclusion was, the problem is because we have these things called identities that are very deep within us and subconscious to a large degree. And our identities are protected very strongly. And you can get some good information. You can get all excited. Oh, I'm going to make a change, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to be more like that. And then you think you're going to do it consciously, But unconsciously, your identity goes, if you do that, then my whole identity is blown,
Yeah.
and we can't have that. So
Wow.
you will sabotage yourself, or you'll not do it, or you'll find a reason not to do it, or excuse, or you'll do it the wrong way, and then you'll say, "This doesn't work. This is crap," and then you drop it. That's the goal of the unconscious, to protect the identity against all assaults. And a lot of times, in order to grow and have breakthroughs and be better and be truly powerful to the degree that we have within us to be, you have to bust through your old limiting identity that says you're not. You're not that powerful. You can't eliminate anger. You can't eliminate stress. If you actually did, your identity as a human being that you've been given by the powers to be is that that's not possible, would be blown. And so there's a part of you that wants to do that and have the benefits, but there's another part of you that goes, whoa, if that's true, if I find out that that's true and I go experiment and try this stuff, and if it works, oh my God, I'm in trouble. My identity's in trouble.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is really big and profound because our brain is wired to be right.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yes, it is. But that was like, it's like, how do I have such a positive, kind of happy, mellow outlook on life, which I've had for the last 40 years? Well, once you realize how wrong you are most of the time, and how all these human beings are walking around on the planet thinking they're right when 80% of the time they're wrong about stuff, you start to see that life is hilarious in the way it plays out, because people have such little self-awareness. They have such little awareness of how biologically we're constructed and our brains are constructed to make us wrong, or to keep us from seeing what's really true, or figuring out what's really true. And then because of that, we get into all these problems. We have all these emotional upsets and all this drama in our life and all this that, it's, and you just see it happening and you go like, life is like hilarious. I worked after I practiced medicine for 15 years as a solo internal medicine doctor. I spent 15 years working for a Blue Cross and Blue Shield corporate health plan as a medical director. And let me tell you something, that's one of the craziest environments you'll ever find, like any corporation. Most of
Okay.
them are just totally crazy, and there's so many bizarre things happen. And, and a lot of people during those 15 years couldn't thrive in that environment. They just got burned out, or they got stressed out, or they couldn't do it. I laughed my way through those old 15 years. I mean, I would go to work every day and I would laugh 10, 15 times a day at some of the crazy stuff that would happen. Because if you just see life the way it is and you have these perspectives that are different, but more truthful than what a lot of people are walking around with, then you see that people could not have these problems, but they don't know that they couldn't have these problems. So they're walking around generating them and pretending like they're stuck with them and they can't do anything about them. And that's not true, and they don't know it. And you can't tell them because their brain will tell you you're crazy. Don't listen to that person. So it's like it's an interesting, life is interesting. For that regard.
Absolutely. I had a friend of mine who said that her father always said that people don't want to be confused with the facts when they have their beliefs or their feelings.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the automatic. It's all our automaticity is wired around whatever we become comfortable with and accustomed to, and our brain sets around that. And anything that would disturb that or take it in a different direction, it goes, no, can't do that.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah. So I know that your book, Life-Changing Anger Cure, which is on Amazon, correctly?
If you just put Life-Changing Anger Cure on Amazon, you'll find it.
Perfect. Okay. So in there, we've talked about the problem. We've talked about the awareness. We've talked about all the filters. But now there's a lot of people are saying, okay, so now what? Will your book give the answers to now what?
Yeah, the book talks about the three filters, but it does more than that. It gives you a whole system, or what do you do with those three filters? How do you use that knowledge that I just shared, and that I share in the book also? How to use that knowledge to deal with any anger situation that comes up in your life. There's a systematic approach that you can use. There's the 4 steps that I teach in the book. It's basically, how do you figure out, again, How do you figure out what's true as compared to what your brain is trying to convince you is true? And there are strategies and tips and ways that you can do that. The book will give you a blueprint for how to do that. And now it looks like this is a book about anger, and it only talks about anger, but it's really about all emotions because they all function the same way. It's just they have different filters. Once you understand how anger works deeply, like you will when you read the book, then you'll know how anxiety works. You'll know how guilt works. You'll know how worry and frustration and sadness and all kinds of different emotions. They all just have different filters, but your brain is tricking you in the same way that it tricks you with anger. And your job is to figure out how that's happening and see through the narratives. Literally, our brains, it's funny, our brains are doing exactly what the media does. The media knows how to make us angry. That's their business model. They know how to make us anxious. They know how to make us angry. They know the three filters that cause anger, and they feed us stories. Somebody did something bad wrong. Somebody hurt and harmed somebody, and they were to blame. And they keep feeding us these stories and telling us this is the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Don't question it. Don't consider any other possibilities. Don't look beyond this. This is what's true. And if they get you to believe that those stories are the whole truth and you're not questioning them or examining them, you'll get angry. Of course, if you did stop, and most of us do now, realize that we can't trust the media. So we're not going to accept on face value the narratives they're sending to us. We're going to say, wait a minute, there might be some alternative viewpoints here. There might be another way of looking at this. There may be more to the picture than they're telling us, because their agenda is to produce this outcome or get clicks or whatever they want to try to do. So we kind of know that the media is tricking us when they're giving us a narrative. It doesn't matter which side of the media it is, or what their political motivations are. They're going to be tricking us because they're only telling us part of the story. So we know that. Okay, but we don't know is that when we have anger, our brain's tricking us, or when we have anxiety, our brain's tricking us, or when we have guilt, our brain's tricking us. We don't know that yet as a society. It's coming. Yeah. It's coming.
Totally.
Once people get that insight, they go like, oh, now I'm on to what the game is. Now I can figure it out.
I totally agree, because that is, to me, what I talk about for empowerment is when we understand that marketing puts us in shame and guilt, saying that we need to buy these products and we need to do these things, and we have all these shoulds. If you were good or if you were this, then you would do this or you would buy that. It is all about manipulation and control.
Yes, and those things aren't true.
No, they're not. And so I love the fact that you are lifting the lid or pulling the curtain back and showing us the Oz behind the curtain there, and giving people power and control back by understanding with the knowledge. And so I thank you so much for being here. I could talk to you for hours more, but unfortunately, we're almost out of time. And so I need to say thank you, Mort, for being here. And to our audience, don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss these conversations with these amazing guests that I'm out searching to bring to you to help you get your empowerment back. And don't forget to buy his book and get that control back. Thank you.
It's amazing how powerful people are when they see through the crap that their brain is feeding them.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Until next week, don't forget to challenge your thoughts so that you can achieve anything.
This has been Unlearn the Crap TV with your host, Kathy Baldwin. Tune in each week as Kathy challenges you to rethink everything you know about personal empowerment and societal structures. Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.